welcome to Good Game. I'm Barjo.
And I'm Hex.
This week we have a very special episode for you.
Yes, as part of ABC's Mental As Week, we're going to be taking a look at how the medium of video games has tackled mental illness, how it's portrayed in games, but also how it can be used to help.
We met up with two very different people who turned to gaming to help them through some serious anxiety and depression, and we'll be hearing both of their stories.
You're always thinking of what's coming next. You're going, oh, how... And you're thinking how things could go wrong as well.
Oh, someone wants to get to know me and game with me, and that actually has hit something in my heart.
We'll also take a look at two games that examine issues of mental health, with Neverending Nightmares and Actual Sunlight. But before we get started, can you name the game for this week?
I'm willing to guess we need to collect this card.
Matt Gilgenbach is the co-founder of 24 Karat Games, and in 2012 he released Retrograde. But despite positive reviews, it wasn't a hit with gamers.
Matt spent 4 long and, by the sounds of it, quite painful years of 80-hour weeks working on Retrograde. 750,000 lines of code later, the game was finally finished at a huge financial and personal cost to him and his family, and also to his mental health.
Matt was clinically diagnosed with OCD and depression, and he quite openly talked about this and his journey with Retrograde at the GDC conference last year, and also online in his dev blog.
I have all these obsessive worries and thoughts and fears about, am I making the wrong decision? And it can be paralyzing.
But now, armed with crowdfunding support and many lessons learned, Matt has reached into the darkest parts of his mind to bring us the twisted journey of Neverending Nightmares, and an animated gore warning with this one.
This is a survival horror game, and right from the moment you press start, it's pretty unsettling. The stillness of the art, the lack of colour except for interaction markers and red, the dark pencil-lined foreground haze. Truly does feel like a bad dream.
Yeah, and just like a bad dream, you're initially quite lost and afraid. You wake up in a house. Eerie music plays, and your only choice is to get up and walk. You then move through rooms, trying doors, until something triggers you to reawaken.
Gabby, no.
Then you wake up and try again. It's often brutally violent and confronting at times. Resets range from falling down a hole to self-mutilation.
Yeah, it's pretty intense, isn't it? The fear of this recurring dream and that mood of hopelessness is what really pushes at you with this game. Much of the imagery feels quite familiar too, as many of our dreams have similar themes like running or being chased. I know I've had a few of those loose tooth dreams.
But the resets feel a little bit like that sense of falling but then waking up right before you hit the ground.
Yeah, but they're not punishing because you're often checkpointed somewhere else further along after each reset.
There's more than a few jump scares thrown into the mix, but they don't get repeated, which is nice. The real fear, however, comes around 45 minutes in as you start reaching the game's more challenging puzzles that require good timing.
Yes, and you discover what I like to call nope rooms. Nope.
Definitely nope.
The gameplay itself is actually quite simple, isn't it? You can walk and you can sprint for a time, but if you run out of breath, you'll be stuck for a few seconds. Sometimes these breaks for panting help set the mood. You're not always being chased. But running out of breath when you are being chased will end badly.
The combination of sound and controller rumble is what I noticed the most, Barjo. In queue with music and action, rumble is a big part of the experience, especially when you can't see what's coming for you.
I like this creepy art style, and there is theory about how some of our dreams are in black and white, and it certainly feels like a muffled dream, especially with that haze on the front of everything.
It also just plays in that common negative emotion that plagues all of our dreams, I think, and that's anxiety. And this game certainly creates a lot of that.
Yeah, even that taskbar icon made me anxious to alt-tab back in.
Much like other survival horror games, you're not really supposed to enjoy Neverending Nightmares. It's about creating stress and a particular mood.
Yes, and we spoke to Matt over email about why he wanted to make this game. He said that after the financial failure of Retrograde, he became depressed again and wanted to show people what that was like by using a video game.
Matt also said that while the story isn't autobiographical, the themes are based around his struggles with mental illness. Some of the violent imagery is taken directly from his intrusive thoughts caused by OCD.
The game doesn't explicitly say this is about mental illness, but knowing Matt's backstory certainly helps give the game some context. But Matt also wanted to make a survival horror game first, with hopes of it being a bit of a Trojan horse to raise awareness.
He also said that many people with mental illness have found playing the game to be a positive experience because they recognise themselves in the game and then realise that they aren't suffering alone. But also acknowledging that the dark subject matter could be a trigger for others, which is something to keep in mind if you're considering playing this game.
I thought this was a really interesting experience, and from a gameplay analysis point of view, Neverending Nightmares is about creating tension, and it taps into that intangible world of a bad dream in a really affecting and tactile way. I liked it. I'm giving it 8 out of 10 rubber chickens.
I think I would have liked a little bit more variety overall, and maybe some trickier puzzles. Also, even though the ending is quite abrupt, it certainly stays with you and makes you think about what you just went through, so I'm giving it 7 out of 10. We encourage anyone who feels they are not coping to seek help by contacting Lifeline on 13 11 14. When we were planning this episode for Mental As, we put a post on our Facebook page asking viewers about their own experiences with mental health as gamers.
And we had many responses, so thank you to all who contributed, one of whom was Alana, a gamer from the western suburbs of Sydney.
How did I win that?
Your whole team.
How did I win that? I was 2 years old and I was watching my older brother play on the Super Nintendo, and I just got really hooked just by watching him play.
Can you tell me a little bit about the mental illnesses that you suffered and how they've affected you?
Yeah, so auditory processing disorder, I was diagnosed it from birth. The brain and the hearing are supposed to be connected so that they can interact and know what's happening in your sight. But because they're disconnected, I mishear things a lot. I suppose just, I didn't know I had it till like maybe 5-10 years ago. And I was like, oh, great, something else is wrong with me. And then like only a couple years ago, I was told that I had depression and anxiety, and we didn't know it was that serious till it actually got worse. It's hard to get people to accept me for who I am, and yeah, to understand that I'm not gonna be like any other person.
And what about some of your experiences growing up and at school and things like that?
Growing up was a bit hard for me. I would lose a friend every year, and you just don't know why. I remember my last year of high school in year 12, I would be sitting with the group, and as soon as a few more showed up, they literally just shuffled away from me.
And so when you were kind of going through some of that stuff at school, was gaming something that you would turn to kind of help you find a bit of peace or solace?
Yeah, basically video games were my happiness. It's my identifier, so no one could truly get to know me unless they talk about video games. It's the affection of a character. I feel like I'm related to the Legend of Zelda series. I kind of learnt that life is a hard journey with the amount of battles you have to go through. And then you got the Kingdom Hearts series. Kingdom Hearts 2 really got to me, mainly because it was all about nobodies and like having someone wanted to be accepted for who they are. I use even the Kingdom Hearts quotes all the time. Like I always go by the quote, if you have a dream, don't wait, act. One of life's little rules. Got it memorized.
Do you have any particular people in your life that have been positive influences on you also?
Yeah, I have my boyfriend, Evan. He's been a huge positive influence, just encouraging me to do what I love, which is video games.
Well, basically when I met her, I said, do you want to go play some Mario Kart? And about an hour later, I said, do you want to go to the Legend of Zelda Symphony? And yeah, so that was a very good start.
And how do you think video games have helped Alana?
Oh, they give her the confidence that she needs. If she's had maybe like a rough day at college, she will be able to go home and play. And it really helps her when she is succeeding and when she's like playing through it and just kicking ass at it, really. That puts her in the best mood ever. I'm Evan.
I'm Alana.
And I love collecting and playing retro video games.
And I love playing retro video games. We have our YouTube channel together, and that's even boosted up like my confidence and to be able to speak non-stop. I've been able to just be more myself, which is what I've been trying to show to everyone all this time.
Evan was mentioning before as well that you've been in some like LANs and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're quite fun. Like when I got to experience it the first time, I was like, oh, this is so great. I wish I could do this more often.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's just cool, I guess, to be around other people who enjoy the same stuff as you.
If people want to get to know me, they actually add me and all that, and I just feel kind of like, someone wants to get to know me and game with me. That actually has hit something in my heart, because when I meet people face to face, they don't really do that.
And so how's your experience been at uni so far?
At the moment, I'm in my major degree now, where I have a major project and I'm like the project manager. I haven't taken charge before, and being able to do that, it's something I can like prove to people when I apply for a job that I can do this, so give me a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you think maybe other gamers out there who are struggling with mental illness might be able to sort of help themselves?
In the end, we're all unique gamers. There's always going to be certain genre games that's going to help you get through all the awful things that happen in real life. So if you do have friends, consult to them, and do see your doctor and seek advice, because by the end of the day, you can't just do this alone. You've got to have someone right there for you.
That's one.
Not yet. We haven't finished yet.
Thank you so much, Alana, for welcoming me into your home and sharing your story.
Next up, aspects of mental illness are frequent themes used, even exploited, in video games. Goose takes a closer look.
Throughout history, there's been an undeniable intrigue concerning mental illness and those that it affects. Whether they're revered for having a link to worlds beyond our own comprehension, or more often ostracised for their differences, those suffering mental illness, both in history and fiction, have carried with them an equal amount of interest and stigma.
Analysing the psychological state of the characters in our games can add poignancy and drive narratives.
That was my downfall.
However, as many examples have also shown, mental illness is often relied on as validation for negative behaviours and extravagant antagonists.
Some would argue such games are exploitative, while others might see them as an interesting way to explore the human psyche.
In the first Borderlands, the enemies were escaped convicts and madmen, and were clearly just absurd pantomime villains there for the blasting. However, Borderlands 2 introduced Tiny Tina, a character labelled by many as problematic.
Goes the bandit.
There were those who questioned whether it was appropriate for a 13-year-old girl traumatised by the murder of her parents to be presented as an entertaining side character.
Child's play. Let me introduce you to my lady.
The Batman franchise is famous for its roster of villains that each encapsulate different elements of psychological illness, emphasised by their imprisonment within an asylum. And while these bold icons appear to almost transcend their afflictions through wild characterisation, it's always based on a realistic aspect of mental illness, be it depression, delusion, or multiple personalities.
Heads or tails, kitty cat.
American McGee's Alice and its sequel Madness Returns both endeavoured to highlight the instability of Alice through the setting itself. A literal journey inside her fractured mind, the world of Wonderland is a dark, twisted manifestation of torment and loss.
It also highlights an overused device in many horror games, with crazed or insane enemy types used to provoke fear through their lack of connection to humanity and unpredictable nature. This rather shallow approach to mental illness is unfortunately common in games, with it often used as an excuse for acts of outrageous violence.
Did I ever tell you what the definition of insanity is?
For example, the character of Vass in Far Cry 3 uses the awareness of his unstable state of mind as a form of intimidation. The result is a memorable caricature of ultra-violence, but one who ultimately has no depth beyond his villainous rants. In contrast, a game like Spec Ops: The Line spends far more time exploring the backstory and nature of its characters.
We need to keep moving.
What? Because of this, we can somewhat rationalize the brutal acts that are taking place in the game, as well as the unsettling effects they have on the main character's mental health.
Judge these men, or pay the price of insubordination.
One of the most interesting examples of a game using mental health as a mechanic is in the original Kane and Lynch, where during co-op, the player controlling Lynch can enter a rage-like state, changing their perception of innocent civilians to that of police officers, creating paranoia and confusion as a result.
Don't be so f***ing quiet! Lynch, cut it out! Relax, just take a deep breath.
On the surface, it's a clever trick to add to the psychotic atmosphere, but what it's really providing is an abrupt and unexpected connection to a very unstable character.
How many did I kill? More than you want to know. Damn it!
And it's these connections that more and more games are trying to make.
Games such as Ether 1 or Papa and Yo bury their complex and less relatable issues such as dementia or alcoholism under layers of relatable gameplay. Doing this allows players to gradually unearth deeper issues themselves and create a better overall understanding than if it had all just been explained to them outright. Even more abstract titles, such as the browser-based Loneliness, strip back all but bare pixels to demonstrate that issues such as depression and anxiety are universal and can be experienced by everyone, even a dot. An ideal shared by the creator of Elude, who designed the abstract depression platformer with the intention to enhance friends' and relatives' understanding of what their loved ones are going through.
But while these games, and many others just like them, are designed to simulate what it might be like to suffer such incomprehensible illnesses, there are others being designed with the goal of alleviating and possibly even curing these same conditions.
The University of Dublin has been experimenting with using custom video games to teach the key principles of cognitive behaviour therapy to youngsters undergoing treatment. The upcoming adventure game Nevermind from Flying Mollusk seeks to make ambitious use of biofeedback technology.
The idea being that by making players more aware of when they're becoming stressed, they can gain greater self-control and composure.
This gamification of mental health therapy has even found its way onto smartphones, with numerous games that aim to reduce anxiety through attention bias modification training.
These concepts, along with more games that choose to seriously address mental health in our world and the worlds of our games, are positive steps on a long road towards a better understanding of our mysterious minds.
Actual Sunlight is an interactive story about depression. When you load the game, it posts its own warning that it deals with mature themes such as depression and suicide and advises you to be at least 18 or over to play it. But before we go any further, I feel we must reiterate and even insist that if you're currently experiencing any sort of depression or issues with mental illness, that you do not play this game.
Absolutely. It deals with feelings of worthlessness, absence of hope, and suicide.
So, who should play this game?
Well, I think this is an important experience for anyone who lacks the understanding of what it's like for someone who is suffering from clinical depression.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So let's get into the story.
You play as Evan Winter. From the moment the game begins, Evan is questioning the very point of getting out of bed each day, as he feels like his life is going nowhere.
There is that immediate sense of listlessness and the repetitive cycle that every day is the same and nothing ever changes. But there's also a kind of cynical optimism to the way that he looks at the world, pointing out that there's always someone more worse off than him, maybe someone impoverished or horribly maligned or starving.
Yes, but even that perspective is presented as though it's a sort of unhelpful advice that is continuously offered to someone in his position. As if focusing on the less fortunate would make him feel somehow less miserable. But it doesn't.
You're right. I mean, as soon as we meet Evan, there's that dark, sinking feeling that he's already given up. But you want so desperately for him to come out of it, for him to somehow just find his way to happiness.
Yes, and each new day that Evan manages to get out of bed feels like a small victory. Even if the day that follows is filled with heartache and frustration. And I think, in a way, everyone can relate to areas in his life that seem so miserable.
Yeah, he's unhappy with his weight and repeatedly makes a plan to change that, but never does.
He's unhappy with his career, it seems to go nowhere. And he's now in a job he hates for a company he doesn't respect, and co-workers he doesn't much like.
But more than that, a kind of desperate loneliness that comes from repeated rejection. And that loneliness permeates every aspect of his life, right down to his unwillingness to sit or be near people in public spaces.
He spends all his money on video games because he isn't involved in the kinds of social activities that perhaps he'd like to be a part of. And there's always that fear of judgment and worry of what people must think of him.
I mean, these are all things that most of us have felt at one point or another.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just feel such a strong connection to the way he relays these feelings. But all of these issues seem to be piled on top of Evan all at once, weighing him down to the point where he feels completely unable to see past it.
And yet there are moments of hope, and they give you hope for Evan as you're playing.
Tiny glimmers, yeah, but they're not enough to rescue Evan from his terribly tortured state of mind. The game will present you with scenarios that make you feel like you have a choice in what happens to him, but ultimately that choice is an illusion, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's what makes the decision to make this an interactive story so interesting, I think. You're physically going through the motions of making decisions, in which for Evan there is generally only one option.
I think that's when you start to feel like there really is no way out for him. Barjo, I found this so incredibly sad.
Yeah, me too. The writing is so open and honest. It made me want to reach into the game and grab him by the shoulders and shake him to try and help him find some path or some way out of this.
Yeah, I felt exactly the same way.
It's like reading through someone's diary. It's so incredibly personal.
Yeah, it is. But as heartbreaking as it is to go on this journey with him, I do think it's an important journey to take. Because maybe Evan reminds you of someone that you know. Maybe you've heard someone say the kinds of things Evan says. And even if they laugh it off as a joke, there's just that little undercurrent of honesty. And maybe it's time you ask them if they needed someone to talk to.
The most important experience I took away from this was that everyone has a story beyond what you see every day. In the office, on the bus, in the street. It's hard to imagine what truly goes on in the mind of someone so unhappy that they can see no way out of that fog. But it's important to try, because reaching out to them could be just that little glimmer of hope that succeeds in piercing through that fog.
This was a tough game to review, Barjo, and I don't really feel comfortable scoring it because I just don't think that this is an experience that can be quantified by a number, to be honest. But I will recommend it for anyone willing to experience the thoughts and actions of someone who's fallen into a dark place and can't get out. If anything, just to help us be better friends, neighbours, and family members to the people around us.
Yes, I think that's a good way to look at it. If you need help or you want to talk to someone right now, you can do so by calling Lifeline on 13 11 14. David Hollingworth is one of Australia's most respected and experienced games and tech journalists.
Having worked for a number of publications, he's currently the editor of PC and Tech Authority.
He's also suffered from crippling anxiety issues. I want to spend some time with David to see how gaming helped him manage his illness.
That's the second one. We've got a proper talk. It's like terrifying. Yeah, I've had the worst memories of that. Especially later.
David, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Tell us about what you do for a living.
I'm a games journalist. It starts here. I write news to the website. I'll potter around on email, and then I head into work.
What's the most stressful thing about your job?
Commenters a lot, actually. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase never read the comments, but that's really, really true when you write online, especially in gaming.
Tell us your story, how you discovered that you had a mental health issue and how you dealt with it.
There was obviously something wrong, but working out what it was took a little while. And it was pretty obvious when I look back at in hindsight. What I have is general anxiety disorder, which basically means, at its worst, I'm scared and nervous all the time. There's kind of physical side of it. There's this crushing feeling. There's jitters, but most of it's centered on kind of like performance stuff. If I write an article and someone doesn't like it, I take it really, really personally. If I'm cooking at home and something doesn't go well, oh God, it's the biggest disaster ever. And there's that overwhelming sense of fear is a bit too strong, but you're always thinking of what's coming next. You're going, oh, how, and you're thinking how things could go wrong as well. And you get locked up by that. And sometimes you literally get locked up by that.
Is there something that happens in your job which may trigger your anxiety?
Oh God, the thing that I hate the most is when people point out spelling errors. You know, it is so simple, easy to make, everyone does them. I read a novel, there's a spelling error in there. You read any website, there's a spelling error in there, but when someone points it out to me, my heart rate picks up. I start thinking, man, I'm so bad at this. The fear starts. people really start getting on my case, I'll start getting a cold sweat. Yeah, and it's all, God, it's a spelling error. People make them, but I just freak out.
Were you upset before when I said that your computer case was dusty, even though you just cleaned it?
I wasn't until you pointed it out.
Upset.
Now I'm a little funny.
I'm not trying to make light of this.
But no, look, even talking about it, you know, I can feel that, you know, your skin goes a little bit cold. The dry mouth starts. I mean, it's all pretty light at the moment, but when it's at its worst, yeah, I'm drenched in sweat. My leg starts to tremor. Yeah, freak out at anything.
And how does this affect you in your job when you get into this kind of mental state?
I get very combative, because basically all the fight and flight responses are incredibly heightened. So either I avoid everything, or I kind of get a little bit cranky at people and I get a little bit snappy. But when it's at its worst, I guess it was happening last year, on the way to work, I would feel it mounting, I'd feel it rising, this dread of getting into work and what was going to be happening there, how I'd be performing through the day, conversations I'd be having, and I'd be running over it all in my head and just be this constant track.
Would you feel that at night too, like when you're trying to sleep?
Definitely. And the same things would just all be running over and over and over, and you're not able to stop.
What is it about gaming that ties in with your anxiety? Do you feel like gaming has helped you?
It's an out, basically. You know, through the day, every decision you make, everything you do, everything you write, if you're worrying about, you can come home, log into a game, and everything's okay. Even when you're playing something and you fail, you respawn. And a lot of games are built around helping you succeed. It's going to be tough, but they want you to get through the quest. They want you to get to the end point.
Can we talk a little bit more about Star Trek?
Look, I'm a giant Trekkie. Star Trek's great because there are lots and lots of different things you can do. You can log in and go, I'm going to complete this quest. I'm going to do some PvP. I'm going to gather minerals in a nebula.
Sounds like with the RPGs and MMOs, there's something in that. Maybe it's all the rewards that you get that helps you. Would you agree?
MMOs are interesting because there's a lot of reward, but at the same time, they really scratch that social itch. And everybody, whether they're suffering through depression or anxiety or what have you, they still want to be social. Sometimes they're not capable of being social in real life. MMO, everyone's got on their fancy dress, their mask, they're all pretending to be someone else. Then it becomes a medium between you and the rest of the world, and they're still there. So you can be a great conversationalist. You can be part of the group because they're essentially social games.
Tell us about the moment that you realised you had some sort of anxiety issue.
You know, my girlfriend pointed it out. You know, she obviously had a close eye view on it, and we talked about it. And I said, yeah, look, I think I need to talk to someone. And she went, oh, hallelujah, thank God. I went into my doctor and I said, look, here's the symptoms. Described that crushing weight on the chest, breathing was becoming an issue, all of that. And she went, oh, anxiety disorder. What do you want to do about it? And I went, I'd like to not have it, thanks. And she went, great, here, have this. And it really was that simple. Once you make the decision that you need to get something done about it and you understand that it's not your fault and it gives me more distance, I can go, oh, you're panicking because of X and you shouldn't be panicking about that. Calm down, back off from it. I'm sleeping a lot better and yeah.
Were you playing games before you were diagnosed?
Yeah, I was, and there was a definite pattern there I was starting to pick up. I would really obsess over something.
Such as?
Total War, Napoleon. I was stopping, restarting. I wanted to get the start just right. I wanted to get my empire off to a good roll, and I was stopping, starting. That's an unhealthy use of gaming. You're really just dodging everything else.
Would you recommend gaming to someone who may be suffering from these kind of issues? You know.
They're not the be-all and end-all. They'll help, but they're not going to cure. If anybody feels they have an issue like this, they should really talk to someone. They should talk to a professional, talk to friends. Getting it off your chest really makes a difference. And going to see a doctor about it and saying, I have a problem, and realizing that that's not a bad thing. You're not alone. Heaps of people go through this, and do something about it.
It sounds like when you found out you had a condition, it was more relief than fear.
It really was, actually, because then it was like, it's then outside of you. You know, it's like, you wouldn't feel bad if you broke your leg, you know, bones break, but people with a mental issue, they blame themselves for it. Even though it's no different, it's a chemical imbalance. So, you know, it's not something you should be too scared of.
Thank you so much for joining us today
problem.
and talking about this issue. Appreciate it. And can I now play with your cat?
Yes.
Who's a little pussycat? Thank you so much to David for sharing your experience with us.
So, did you name the game for this week? It was A Mobius Proposal. Created by its programmer as a way to propose to his wife, the game included a short co-op campaign, followed by a graphic, which then asked player 2 to change the batteries in the controller. This then revealed a hidden ring in the controller that made for a unique proposal.
Joanne, will you marry me?
And it's our Name the Game because it was made by Matt Gilgenbeck, the same developer behind this week's Neverending Nightmares, and we're happy to say she said yes.
Yes, but he did have a sequence for no, and luckily he didn't have to use it. Coming up next week on the show, big titles including Alien Isolation. Thanks for joining us on this very special episode of Good Game.
Yes, and please remember there are times in everyone's life when we all need help and encouragement. If you're struggling to cope, do reach out because help is at hand.
Until next time, Barjo out.
Hex out. And hug.
Whew, it's a pretty stressful episode. I think I need a hug, but no touching. Just.
Oh, this is our usual. This is our standard hug. So platonic.
And break. Ah! Got me on the head!